The story begins on a planet that few in the galaxy had ever noticed. It was not large or spectacular in any way. It lacked the bright rings of distant giants or the lush forests of the thriving worlds in the core sectors. Its surface was mostly rocky, with jagged mountains that jutted out like broken teeth, and wide deserts where scorching winds swept across endless dunes. The skies were a strange shade of orange, filtered through clouds of fine dust, which made sunlight appear dim and almost eerie. Rainfall was rare, and when it came, it was violent, often flooding the small riverbeds and carving deep gullies into the landscape. Despite the harsh conditions, life had managed to survive and adapt. The creatures on this world were hardy and resilient, evolved to withstand extremes of temperature, scarcity of water, and dangerous predators. Even the plants were tough, with thick leaves and deep roots that could reach hidden reservoirs of underground moisture. The inhabitants of this world, a small alien civilization, had built their society in these difficult conditions. They were not enormous, nor were they physically powerful compared to some of the other species scattered across the galaxy, but they had an intelligence that allowed them to survive. Their homes were carved into mountains or dug into the ground, providing shelter from sandstorms and heat. They lived in close-knit communities, relying heavily on cooperation and shared labor because survival on such a harsh planet required everyone to work together. Even their culture revolved around these idea stories and songs often told of ancestors who had survived droughts, attacks by predators, and even volcanic eruptions. These stories were more than entertainment. They were lessons, reminders of the importance of resilience, foresight, and unity. Despite their ingenuity, life on this planet was always a struggle. Resources were scarce, and every year brought new challenges. Water had to be carefully rationed, and food often came from hunting the hardy creatures that roamed the deserts or from cultivating the few plants that could grow under harsh conditions. Disease, though not rampant, was particularly dangerous because medical knowledge and technology were limited. The alien civilization had developed basic tools and primitive machinery, but they were nothing compared to the advanced technologies of the more developed species in nearby systems. They knew about the larger galaxy, about fleets of ships, distant wars, and civilizations that could travel between stars. But these things seemed like myths to the younger generations. Their world was small, isolated, and fragile. One day, disaster struck. A sudden environmental catastrophe hit one of their largest cities. Perhaps it was an earthquake that shook the very foundations of the mountain homes, or a massive sandstorm that swept through the streets, or even a sudden flooding of one of the rare rivers. Whatever it was, the impact was devastating. Buildings collapsed, and families were torn apart. The survivors were left stunned, struggling to comprehend the scale of the destruction. For a civilization already accustomed to hardship, this was a shock beyond their normal endurance. It was not just the loss of homes and lives, but also the destruction of the fragile systems they had built to survive: irrigation channels, food storage facilities, and shelters that had taken years to construct. The leaders of the alien civilization convened immediately. These were not kings or emperors, but elected or chosen figures known for their wisdom and calm judgment. They understood that their world was not strong enough to recover on its own from such a disaster. They had always relied on internal cooperation, but the scale of this catastrophe made it clear that external help was now necessary. The elders debated what could be done. Some suggested sending explorers to nearby star systems to request assistance, but their ships were slow, fragile, and incapable of carrying significant supplies or messages across the vast distances of space. Time was running out. The survivors were struggling to find food and clean water. Diseases were spreading and the climate was unforgiving. In desperation, the council made a difficult decision. They would send out a call for help, a signal that would travel across the galaxy, hoping that someone, anyone, would respond. They designed it carefully, encoding information about their civilization, their plight, and their precise location. They tried to make it clear that they were peaceful, non-threatening beings in urgent need of aid. At the same time, they could not hide the desperation and urgency of the message, for if the plea was too mild, it might be ignored. They poured all their remaining energy and technical knowledge into crafting a signal strong enough to pierce the vast emptiness of space. Sending the SOS was a monumental act for the alien civilization. It was a gamble, a leap of faith into the unknown. They had no way of knowing who might hear it, what kind of response they would receive, or whether it would even reach another intelligent species at all. Yet, for the first time in their history, they looked beyond their isolated world, hoping that the wider galaxy might be aware of their suffering. They understood that they were risking exposure to unknown dangers. Sending a signal to the stars could attract attention from hostile forces as well as helpful ones, but they had no choice. Survival demanded action, and inaction would lead to certain extinction. Meanwhile, among the people of the alien civilization there was a mixture of hope and fear. Children and elders alike gathered around the signal transmitters, watching as the machines whirred and lights blinked. Some prayed to unseen forces, others whispered words of encouragement to each other. It was an emotional moment, the culmination of years of hardship and struggle. A moment where their tiny civilization reached out across the cosmos, seeking a lifeline, Many of them had never even seen another star up close, and yet now, their fates were tied to the vast unknown that's a signal shot into the depths of space. Traveling light years beyond their fragile planet, the aliens waited. Days turned into weeks, and the survivors worked tirelessly to keep each other alive, all while hoping that anyone would come to their aid. They had no way of knowing that their plea would not reach a friendly hand, but instead, a force more dangerous than anything they had imagined. They were unaware that the SOS, designed to summon help, might instead summon the galaxy's most ruthless and feared mercenaries, the Deathworlder fleet, known for conquering and destroying planets with absolute brutality. This was the beginning of a chain of events that none of them could have foreseen. The aliens, simple and peaceful in their ways, that had taken a single, desperate step toward survival, unaware that their small action would ripple across the galaxy and trigger consequences that would challenge everything they knew about danger, courage, and ingenuity. Their world, fragile as it was, had suddenly become part of a much larger story. A story that would test their resilience, intelligence, and will to survive in ways they could never have imagined. Despite the looming threat, this moment also highlighted the strengths of the civilization, their adaptability, unity, and ability to face challenges head-on. The very act of sending the SOS was a testament to their hope, creativity, and determination. Even in the face of possible annihilation, they were willing to reach out, to communicate, and to trust that the universe might respond to their plea. This combination of desperation and ingenuity would prove to be their defining characteristic, the very trait that might allow them to endure what lay ahead. In essence, this part of the story is not just about a signal sent into space. It is about a civilization defined by its harsh environment, its shared history of struggle, and its unwavering will to survive. It is about beings who, despite facing almost certain extinction, found the courage to act, to reach beyond their world, and to hope for something greater. This moment captures the fragile beauty of life in extreme circumstances and sets the stage for the extraordinary events that were about to unfold, a moment where survival, ingenuity, and courage collided in the most unexpected ways. The stage is set, a small, resilient civilization, a desperate SOS sent across the galaxy, and an unknown response that could either save them or destroy them entirely. From this humble, perilous beginning, the story of courage and survival in the face of overwhelming odds begins to unfold. After the desperate SOS had been sent across the galaxy, the alien civilization continued to survive the aftermath of their disaster, unaware of who or what might respond. Days passed with nothing but silence. The small communities that had survived the catastrophe worked tirelessly to rebuild what little had been destroyed. They rationed food carefully, repaired shelters, and treated the sick with the limited medical knowledge they possessed. Every day was a struggle, yet there was an underlying tension, a feeling that something beyond their understanding was moving toward them. The signal they had sent was more than a plea. It was a beacon, and in the vast emptiness of space, beacons never go unnoticed for long. Somewhere far away, light years from this fragile planet, the SOS reached the senses of an infamous fleet, the Deathworlder mercenaries. These beings were legendary across the galaxy for their ruthlessness, their ability to survive and conquer the deadliest planets, and their utter lack of mercy toward any species they considered weak. The Deathworlders were not explorers or diplomats. They were warriors, hunters, and conquerors who thrived on danger and chaos. They saw life as a challenge, and they sought worlds where survival was difficult, because these worlds tested their skill, strategy, and courage. The fleet that detected the alien SOS immediately recognized the signal as a call for help. Unlike most species, the Deathworlders did not interpret desperation as weakness. They saw it as opportunity. The fleet's commanders analyzed the signal carefully. It was different from the normal distress calls they encountered. This was not a simple plea for medical aid or evacuation. The signal contained unusual details about the planet, hints at hidden structures, and cryptic references to an artifact that could influence or control advanced fleets. The Deathworlders were intrigued. While the alien civilization appeared weak and primitive, the mention of an artifact suggested something valuable, perhaps even powerful. Their instincts told them that investigating this planet could yield a significant advantage: resources, technology, or information that few other civilizations could access. And so, the fleet set a course for the alien world, navigating across dangerous sectors of space filled with debris fields, asteroid belts, and volatile nebulae. Back on the planet, the aliens had no way of knowing what was approaching. They continued their rebuilding efforts, hoping that some kind of assistance might arrive. There were whispers among the community leaders about the possibility of help from other civilizations. Some imagined fleets of friendly ships, perhaps bringing supplies or engineers to aid them. Others feared that the SOS might never reach anyone, that the universe was too vast, and that their plea would vanish into the void. The aliens tried to maintain hope, but deep down, they knew they were vulnerable. Their defenses were minimal, their technology primitive, and their knowledge of the galaxy limited. Any visitor from space could easily overwhelm them. As the Deathworlder fleet approached, the tension in the galaxy shifted. Unlike peaceful explorers, these mercenaries did not come with trade goods or diplomatic missions. They arrived in ships that were heavily armored, bristling with weapons capable of destroying entire cities. Each vessel was a fortress, designed for survival in the harshest environments, just like the mercenaries themselves. Their pilots were skilled beyond imagination, accustomed to navigating asteroid storms and planetary rings while engaging in combat. They had survived worlds where the atmosphere could dissolve flesh in minutes, or where predators could tear a ship apart with a single strike. The Deathworlders approached with confidence, knowing that any resistance they encountered would likely crumble before their might. The aliens, meanwhile, began noticing unusual phenomena in their skies. Strange lights appeared far beyond their atmosphere, moving in patterns that did not match any known celestial objects. Some believed it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a storm in space or a comet passing close by. Others sensed something more deliberate, a presence that watched and waited. The elders convened and debated what action to take. With little information to guide them, they prepared for both possibilities. First, that help had arrived. Second, that a threat was incoming. They fortified their shelters, trained small groups in defensive strategies, and prepared basic warning systems to alert communities of any sudden danger. Every effort was made to protect what remained of their fragile civilization. Meanwhile, the Deathworlder fleet continued its approach, scanning the planet's surface and analyzing every signal it could detect. They were experts at interpreting subtle cues that other species would miss. They noticed the remnants of the destroyed city, signs of recent activity, and the general scarcity of resources. From their perspective, the aliens were weak but interesting, a species whose desperation made them vulnerable, yet whose hidden artifact promised potential power. The mercenaries discussed strategy. Some argued for an immediate assault to secure the planet quickly, taking whatever advantage they could. Others suggested a more cautious approach, to investigate the artifact first before committing to a full-scale attack. This debate reflected the Deathworlders' unique mindset. They respected danger, valued strategy, and did not act recklessly, even if they thrived on violence. As the fleet entered the planet's system, it became clear that the aliens were unprepared for such visitors. Their primitive technology offered no defense against the approaching ships. Communication signals were limited, and they had no weapons capable of threatening the invaders. Panic spread among the population. Families gathered together, unsure whether to flee to the mountains, hide underground, or attempt some kind of negotiation. Fear and uncertainty dominated the communities. They were confronted with a force far beyond anything they had ever experienced, a force that could destroy everything they had fought so hard to preserve. Amid this rising tension, a small group of alien scientists and engineers began to consider an alternative approach. They realized that brute strength would not help them against the Deathworlder fleet. Instead, they had to rely on intelligence, creativity, and the hidden knowledge embedded in the artifact, referenced in their SOS. The artifact was something few had fully understood, but it was a legacy of their ancestors, a device of unknown power that could interact with advanced technology. It represented hope, a chance to survive, and perhaps even a way to turn the situation to their advantage. The scientists worked feverishly, analyzing old schematics, decoding ancient texts, and testing theories under immense pressure. Every moment counted, as the fleet drew closer with every passing hour. At the same time, the psychological impact of the approaching fleet affected the entire civilization. Leaders held emergency councils, citizens huddled in shelters, and communities tried to maintain order despite growing fear. This situation forced the aliens to confront their weaknesses: limited technology, minimal defenses, and a lack of knowledge about the broader galaxy. Yet it also revealed their strengths: resilience, cooperation, and an ability to adapt under pressure. They learned quickly that survival depended not just on avoiding danger, but on understanding it, anticipating it, and using whatever resources they had to their advantage. As they moved closer, began to send signals of their own. These were not friendly greetings but scans and assessments, probing the planet's defenses, measuring population density, and analyzing potential threats. They were meticulous, calculating risks, and preparing strategies for either conquest or negotiation. The mercenaries were not interested in dialogue unless it served their goals. From their perspective, the aliens' SOS was a challenge, a test of skill, judgment, and adaptability. They saw opportunity in the unknown, and their curiosity was as dangerous as their weapons. In the midst of this mounting tension, the stage was set for confrontation. The alien civilization faced an existential threat unlike anything before. Their survival depended on quick thinking, ingenuity, and courage. They had to act decisively, relying on both the knowledge of their ancestors and their own creativity to navigate the crisis. At the same time, the Deathworlder fleet, powerful and experienced, represented a force of unpredictability and danger, whose intentions could swing from curiosity to annihilation in an instant. The situation was fragile, and every choice carried weighty consequences. Ultimately, this part of the story highlights the rise of challenge. The aliens' desperate plea for help had reached unintended recipients, turning hope into peril. The approaching fleet represented both the promise of salvation and the threat of destruction. The civilization had to confront its vulnerability, While discovering the strengths it had developed over centuries of struggle, they were forced into a position where ingenuity, courage, and adaptation would determine whether they would survive or be wiped from existence. The tension, uncertainty, and looming threat made every moment critical, creating a narrative filled with suspense, stakes, and the need for heroism. The rise of the challenge is not just external, it is internal as well. The aliens had to face their fears, unite their communities, and make strategic decisions under pressure. They had to overcome the instinct to panic and instead think rationally, creatively, and collaboratively. Every individual had a role to play, and their ability to adapt and cooperate would ultimately decide their fate. This combination of external threat and internal growth forms the heart of Part 2, setting the stage for escalation in the critical moments that would follow. By the end of this part, the alien civilization had fully recognized the magnitude of the challenge they faced. They were no longer dealing merely with natural disasters or environmental hardships. They were confronting a calculated, intelligent, and extremely dangerous force from the wider galaxy. Yet even in this moment of fear, hope was not lost. The artifacts, the scientists' ingenuity, and the population's resilience hinted at the possibility that survival was still within reach, provided they acted wisely and boldly. The moment of crisis arrived faster than anyone in the alien civilization could have imagined. The Deathworlder fleet, massive and imposing, had entered the planet's system and was now in clear view of the inhabitants. The alien people had watched strange lights and sensed movement before, but nothing could have prepared them for the sheer scale and power of the approaching fleet. The ships were enormous, black and metallic, bristling with weapons that glinted even in the dim orange sunlight filtering through the planet's dusty atmosphere. The fleet moved with precision, coordinated as if each ship were an extension of a single mind, and the aliens understood immediately that this was no ordinary visitor. They were facing a force capable of total destruction. Panic swept through the cities and communities. Families ran to their shelters, children clung to their parents, and elders tried desperately to maintain calm. The people had survived harsh weather, scarcity of resources, and attacks from dangerous wildlife. But this was something completely different. This was intelligent, calculated, and relentless. It was a force that had the knowledge, power, and intent to wipe their civilization off the map in a single strike. The alien leaders convened an emergency council, speaking urgently through whatever communication channels they had. They debated their limited options, knowing full well that conventional defense was impossible. Their weapons, primitive compared to the Deathworlder armaments, could not even scratch the hulls of the approaching ships. Amid the chaos, a small group of alien scientists and engineers realized that sheer force would not save them. Instead, they had to rely on intelligence, ingenuity, and the knowledge embedded in the artifact referenced in their SOS. The artifact was ancient, a relic from a previous era of their civilization when they had possessed far greater technological knowledge. Its true purpose had been partially forgotten, but it was rumored to have the ability to communicate or influence advanced machines. The scientists worked frantically, gathering data, decoding inscriptions, and piecing together a plan. Time was slipping away, and every moment the fleet drew closer increased the risk of total annihilation. The Deathworlders began their assault. Ships descended into orbit, scanning cities, and firing warning shots that caused buildings to collapse and panic to escalate. The aliens had no real defenses, so most could only watch from the safety of underground shelters as parts of their cities were reduced to rubble. The psychological impact was devastating. The people realized that survival would require more than luck. It required a strategy that none had tried before, a plan that combined courage, intellect, and the willingness to take enormous risks. The scientists decided to use the artifact. Its design was enigmatic, a combination of crystalline structures, metal conduits, and glowing interfaces. Activating it required a precise sequence of steps, knowledge of energy manipulation, and an understanding of principles that few living aliens could grasp. The team worked in shifts, often risking their lives to retrieve components from damaged buildings, while others monitored the approaching fleet and relayed information about its movements. Every action was tense, every mistake potentially fatal. The artifact became their only hope, their secret weapon against a force vastly superior in strength and technology. As the Deathworlders closed in, the fleet's leaders noticed anomalies. Signals from the planet were unusual, patterns that did not match normal communications. The mercenaries, who were highly experienced and analytical, became suspicious. A small subset of the fleet decided to investigate these signals further, dispatching specialized reconnaissance ships to probe the planet and gather more detailed information. These ships were fast, agile, and heavily shielded, designed to explore hostile worlds and assess threats without committing the entire fleet to danger. Their arrival intensified the tension on the planet's surface. The aliens could hear and sometimes see these reconnaissance ships maneuvering above, their movements deliberate and intimidating. In one of the underground laboratories, the lead scientists finally managed to activate the artifact. Energy flowed through the structure, illuminating the room with a brilliant, almost blinding light. The artifact began to emit a signal, not just any signal, but one capable of interacting with the technology of the Deathworlder fleet. It was as if the artifact was speaking in a language the fleet could understand, transmitting information that the mercenaries could not ignore. The reconnaissance ships detected the signal and paused their operations. The fleet commanders held emergency consultations via secure channels, debating the meaning and significance of this unexpected interference. The artifact had shifted the balance slightly, introducing uncertainty into what they had assumed would be an easy conquest. The aliens realized the artifact's potential to save them, but they also understood the stakes. If they miscalculated, the Deathworlders could interpret the signal as a trap, a challenge, or even an act of aggression, leading to an immediate and devastating attack. They adjusted the signal, modulating frequencies, and creating patterns designed to convey intelligence without triggering hostility. This required immense skill, deep understanding of both the artifact and the approaching fleet, and a calmness under pressure that few could maintain under such dire circumstances. Each moment was a test of nerve, and every decision could mean life or death. Meanwhile, the fleet commanders debated their next move. Deathworlders were not reckless. They did not attack without evaluating risks. Yet the unusual signal from the artifact had sparked curiosity. Could this primitive civilization actually have a hidden advantage, or was it a trap designed to lure them into danger? The fleet's internal discussions were tense, filled with speculation and suspicion. Some favored an immediate strike to eliminate any potential threat, while others urged caution, preferring to investigate and assess the situation before committing to full engagement. The uncertainty worked in the aliens' favor, giving them precious time to complete the final steps of activating the artifact. As the situation reached its peak, the aliens coordinated a simultaneous effort. Some maintained defensive positions to protect the artifact, others relayed information to communities about safe zones, and the scientists focused entirely on sustaining the energy flow through the device. The planet's population watched from hiding, understanding that the outcome of these actions would determine their survival. The atmosphere was electric with fear and hope. They were witnessing the intersection of ancient knowledge, desperate courage, and unimaginable power. The artifact began to respond in ways that the aliens could barely comprehend. It projected holographic images, emitted pulses of energy, and seemed to interact directly with the approaching fleet. The reconnaissance ships reported anomalous systems behaving unpredictably, sensors being disrupted, and signals that suggested the planet was far more dangerous than it appeared. The Deathworlder commanders realized that this was no ordinary primitive planet. They could not immediately discern the source of the interference, but they understood that their advantage was no longer guaranteed. Their confidence was shaken, and their plans were now subject to unknown variables. During this critical moment, the aliens displayed remarkable bravery. Scientists ventured into exposed areas to stabilize power conduits. Engineers worked in damaged sectors to ensure uninterrupted energy flow, and ordinary citizens followed instructions to maintain safety and order. The entire civilization, despite fear and uncertainty, acted as a cohesive unit. Their cooperation and courage under pressure were extraordinary, proving that intelligence, unity, and adaptability could rival even the most ruthless and powerful forces. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the artifact reached full activation. It projected a field around the planet, simulating conditions that would deter the Deathworlder fleet. Sensors on the approaching ships detected lethal environmental simulations, extreme hazards, and signals of powerful defensive systems. The fleet, for the first time, hesitated. The commanders assessed the risks and concluded that a direct assault might be far more dangerous than they had anticipated. For a civilization accustomed to conquering deadly worlds, the appearance of danger even simulated was enough to make them reconsider. In this escalating moment, the aliens had turned a seemingly hopeless situation into a strategic advantage. The artifact, combined with their ingenuity, courage, and coordination, had introduced uncertainty into the fleet's calculations. They had survived the initial onslaught and created the conditions for negotiation or retreat. This was a critical turning point, demonstrating that survival was possible even against overwhelmingly powerful adversaries. The aliens had transformed desperation into opportunity through intelligence, creativity, and sheer determination. This part of the story highlights the intensity of the crisis. It is a narrative of tension, strategy, and courage under pressure. The aliens faced a force capable of total annihilation, yet they used their knowledge, tools, and unity to create a chance at survival. Every moment was filled with suspense. Every decision, every calculation, and every action could lead to either salvation or destruction. The escalation showed both the dangers of their situation and the extraordinary potential within a civilization capable of adapting under extreme pressure. It illustrates that even the most seemingly powerless can alter the outcome of events through courage, intelligence, and cooperation. The aliens' ability to activate the artifact, coordinate their actions, and introduce uncertainty into the Deathworlder fleet's plans set the stage for the resolution to follow. Their ingenuity and bravery in this moment proved that survival is not solely about strength or weaponry, but about understanding the environment, acting decisively, and seizing opportunities even when the odds seem insurmountable. By the end of this part, The alien civilization had survived the initial assault and positioned themselves in a place of strategic advantage. The fleet, while still powerful, was uncertain, cautious, and temporarily deterred. The critical moment had passed, and the aliens now had a chance to shape the next steps of their destiny. The stakes remained high, but their actions during this moment of crisis demonstrated that even the most desperate circumstances could be turned into survival through courage, creativity, and unity. The tension that had gripped the alien civilization for days finally reached a turning point. The Deathworlder fleet, massive and powerful, had closed in on the planet, and the aliens had done everything they could to survive the initial approach. The artifact they had activated had introduced a sense of danger and uncertainty to the fleet, causing hesitation and confusion among the mercenary commanders. But the aliens knew that hesitation alone would not ensure survival. They had to act decisively, using their ingenuity, courage, and the last remnants of their knowledge to secure a resolution that would protect their civilization from annihilation. Inside the underground laboratories, the lead scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to fully understand the artifact's capabilities. The device was far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. It was not merely a tool for communication or defense. It was a complex interface capable of interacting with advanced technology across vast distances. By sending precise signals, the artifact could manipulate systems on approaching ships, create illusions of hazardous conditions, and even project a force that made the planet appear far deadlier than it really was. The team worked in shifts, each member focused on maintaining the energy flow, recalibrating the artifact, and decoding the strange symbols that controlled its function. Every action required precision. A single error could collapse the system, leaving them defenseless against the Deathworlder fleet. Above ground, the alien population remained hidden, anxiously monitoring the skies. Children clung to their parents, elders whispered prayers, and even the bravest warriors knew that this moment was critical. The planet had already suffered so much, and the fear of total destruction weighed heavily on every mind. At the same time, a sense of hope had begun to emerge. The artifact was working. The fleet was uncertain. For the first time in days, the aliens felt that survival was not impossible. They had something the Deathworlders did not expect: intelligence, creativity, and a deep understanding of their own environment that they could use to manipulate perceptions and protect their world. The Deathworlder fleet was cautious but curious. Their reconnaissance ships had reported anomalies, strange energy readings, disrupted sensors, and environmental signals that suggested the planet was far more dangerous than it appeared. The commanders of the fleet were experienced and ruthless, but even they had to consider the possibility of risk. They were masters of combat, but they respected danger and calculated every move carefully. Some of their captains wanted to strike immediately to assert dominance, but others warned that the signals could be a trap, designed to lure them into an ambush. The fleet's hesitation provided the aliens with a crucial window of opportunity, and they were determined to make the most of it. The lead scientist had an idea. Instead of simply defending against the fleet, they would use the artifact to create the illusion of a fully armed and dangerous planetary defense system by sending precise signals to the fleet. The artifact projected holographic images of massive energy turrets, impenetrable shields, and automated drones patrolling the skies. It even simulated environmental hazards, making the planet appear as if it were surrounded by deadly energy storms, unstable terrain, and lethal radiation zones. The Deathworlders, who were used to conquering the most dangerous worlds, recognized these signals as indicators of a true Deathworld. They knew that even the slightest miscalculation could result in massive losses. The illusion created fear, uncertainty, and caution in a fleet that was otherwise supremely confident. The aliens continued to enhance the illusion. They synchronized energy pulses with planetary activity, timed flashes with storms, and used the artifact to simulate massive explosions and environmental hazards. Every signal was designed to convince the Deathworlders that the planet was not only dangerous but potentially lethal to even the most experienced and well-equipped mercenaries. The simulations were so convincing that even seasoned captains debated whether an attack would be worth the risk. The alien team had effectively turned their small, primitive civilization into a formidable presence in the eyes of the most ruthless warriors in the galaxy. Without firing a single weapon, as this was happening, communication channels were carefully monitored. The scientists used the artifact to send cryptic but strategic signals to individual Deathworlder captains, suggesting that there was an intelligent force capable of controlling the planet's defenses. Some captains interpreted this as a trap, while others saw it as an opportunity to negotiate. The fleet, which had approached with the expectation of easy conquest, now faced uncertainty and the possibility of catastrophic losses. This shift in perception was exactly what the aliens had hoped to achieve. They understood that survival was not solely about strengths but about influencing the enemy's calculations and perceptions. The tension escalated further when a small subset of the Death Fleet decided to investigate the artifact directly. They dispatched highly trained officers and engineers to analyze the signals and probe the planet's surface. These specialists approached cautiously, aware that a mistake could cost them dearly. The aliens, anticipating this move, used the artifact to create additional simulations, localized energy discharges, holographic traps, and false readings that exaggerated the planet's hostility. Every attempt to probe or interact with the artifact was met with these strategic countermeasures, which made the fleet's experts hesitant and unsure. The aliens had effectively taken control of the narrative, dictating the terms of engagement without any direct confrontation. Meanwhile, the alien population, watching from shelters and underground facilities, began to feel a sense of empowerment. They realized that their ingenuity and courage had changed the situation. What had started as a desperate struggle for survival had evolved into a carefully orchestrated strategy. The artifact was not merely a defensive tool, it was a weapon of perception, turning fear and uncertainty against the Deathworlders. The scientists continued to fine-tune the system, adjusting frequencies, modulating signals, and synchronizing environmental simulations to maintain the illusion of danger. Every action reinforced the perception that the planet was far more dangerous than it appeared, and the fleet's confidence continued to waver. At the peak of the crisis, the Deathworlder fleet made a critical decision. After careful assessment, the commanders concluded that an assault could result in significant losses, and the planet's defenses might be far more advanced than they could handle. They debated among themselves, weighing the risks and potential rewards. Some argued for retreat, while others proposed sending envoys to negotiate or investigate further. The hesitation signaled a turning point. The aliens had achieved the impossible. They had forced a fleet known for ruthlessness and efficiency to reconsider its plans. Survival was no longer a matter of chance. It was becoming a strategic reality. The aliens then took additional steps to solidify their position. Using the artifact, they transmitted signals suggesting that the planet possessed hidden resources, advanced technology, and powerful intelligence capable of coordinating defenses. The Deathworlders, who were skilled in interpreting such signals, could not ignore these warnings. They recognized that an attack could lead to catastrophic losses, and the perceived risk outweighed the potential reward. For the first time, the fleet's commanders considered withdrawal as the safest option. The aliens, through clever use of the artifact and careful strategy, had turned the tide of what had seemed like an unwinnable situation. As the fleet began to retreat, the aliens cautiously monitored their movements. The skies gradually cleared, and the immediate threat receded. The civilization had survived the assault, not through direct confrontation or superior firepower, but through intelligence, creativity, and unity. The artifact had proven to be more than a tool. It had become a symbol of the civilization's resilience, a demonstration of their ability to influence outcomes despite their apparent weakness. Every member of the alien population had played a role, whether through direct action, support, or simply maintaining morale during the crisis. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the alien leaders and scientists reflected on the lessons learned. They understood that survival required not just courage but ingenuity, strategy, and the willingness to take calculated risks. The artifact had given them an advantage, but it was their ability to think creatively, act decisively, and coordinate as a society that ultimately ensured their survival. They had transformed desperation into opportunity, fear into strategic advantage, and vulnerability into power. This resolution marked a turning point in their history, demonstrating that even the smallest, most fragile civilizations could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. This part of the story emphasizes the resolution through intelligence and strategy. The aliens did not need to defeat the Deathworlders through sheer force. They needed to make the fleet believe that doing so would be too dangerous. By controlling perceptions, simulating threats, and leveraging the artifact's capabilities, they achieved a peaceful resolution that preserved their civilization. The resolution was not just about survival. It was about demonstrating that ingenuity, courage, and unity could overcome even the most formidable opponents. Finally, the planet slowly returned to a state of cautious normalcy. Communities emerged from shelters, families reunited, and the alien population began the slow process of rebuilding once again. They had survived what had seemed like certain destruction, and their civilization emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident in their ability to face future challenges. The artifact remained a powerful tool, a reminder of the critical role that intelligence and creativity played in their survival. The Deathworlder fleet, meanwhile, departed with caution, leaving behind a civilization that had earned a rare measure of respect through its courage and cleverness. After the terrifying confrontation with the Deathworlder fleet, the alien civilization began to slowly emerge from the shadows of fear and uncertainty. The immediate danger had passed, and the fleet that had once threatened their existence had retreated into the vastness of space. Yet, even though the crisis was over, the aliens were not the same as before. The ordeal had left an indelible mark on every individual, from the youngest children to the oldest elders. Their world had survived, but it had survived through ingenuity, courage, and the collective effort of every member of their society. Reflection became a necessary part of their recovery. As they sought to understand the lessons of the catastrophe and how it had reshaped their civilization, In the days following the fleet's departure, communities cautiously ventured back into the areas that had been damaged during the initial assault. Buildings were in ruins, streets were littered with debris, and the familiar landscape of their cities had been altered. Despite this, there was a sense of relief and cautious optimism. The alien leaders organized reconstruction efforts, prioritizing shelter, food distribution, and medical care for those who had been injured or traumatized. That survivors worked together as they had never worked before, motivated not just by necessity, but by a shared understanding that their unity had been a key factor in surviving such a formidable threat. The artifact, which had played a critical role in their survival, was treated with a mixture of awe and respect. Scientists and engineers continued to study it, carefully documenting every detail of its operation. They had learned that it was capable of influencing advanced technology in ways that they had never imagined. But beyond its technical capabilities, the artifact became a symbol of their civilization's resilience. It represented the ingenuity, courage, and creativity that had allowed them to turn a desperate situation into a strategic advantage. The younger generations, in particular, were fascinated by it, seeing it as a source of inspiration and a reminder that intelligence and collaboration could achieve what raw power could not. The population also began to reflect on the social lessons of the crisis. For years, the aliens had relied on routines, traditions, and small-scale cooperation. But the encounter with the Deathworlders had shown them the importance of adaptability, quick decision-making, and the ability to work together under extreme pressure. Communities that had previously been isolated or focused solely on their own survival now understood that collective effort was essential. Families shared knowledge and resources. Engineers and scientists collaborated with warriors and laborers, and even children were taught the value of alertness, observation, and creative problem-solving. The crisis had united the civilization in ways that had never been experienced before, strengthening social bonds and fostering a culture of mutual support at the same time. The aliens reflected on the nature of the galaxy beyond their world. Before the SOS, they had known of distant civilizations and interstellar conflicts only in vague terms. The arrival of the Deathworlder fleet made them realize the vastness and danger of the universe. They understood that their world, which had always seemed isolated, was part of a much larger system filled with powerful forces, unpredictable threats, and opportunities. This awareness was humbling, but it also instilled a sense of purpose. The civilization recognized that survival would require not only adapting to their environment, but also understanding and navigating the broader galaxy. They began to consider how they could monitor space, develop early warning systems, and potentially establish alliances with other species in the future. Psychologically, the experience had a profound impact on the population. Fear had been intense, but it had been accompanied by courage and determination. Many aliens found a new sense of confidence in their abilities, realizing that they could face threats far beyond what they had imagined. Stories of bravery, quick thinking, and sacrifice spread throughout communities, becoming part of their cultural narrative. The young were taught not only the history of their ancestors' survival, but also the recent events that had shaped their society. These stories reinforced the importance of intelligence, strategy, and unity, ensuring that the lessons learned would be passed down to future generations. The leaders and scientists also reflected on their responsibilities moving forward. They knew that the artifact had saved their civilization, but they could not rely on it indefinitely. They began to study it in depth, seeking to understand its mechanisms and potential applications. Some proposed using it to enhance planetary defense systems, while others focused on decoding its principles to develop new technologies. The artifact became a catalyst for a technological renaissance, inspiring research and innovation that promised to strengthen the civilization's ability to survive and thrive in the galaxy. The ordeal had shown them that knowledge and ingenuity were as valuable as physical strength, if not more so. The civilization also reflected on the morality of the situation. The Deathworlders had been ruthless, yet the aliens had survived without firing a weapon or engaging in direct combat. Their victory was one of intellect and strategy rather than brute force. This outcome reinforced a belief in the power of cleverness, communication, and strategic thinking. The aliens understood that conflicts could often be resolved or at least survive through intelligence, planning, and the ability to anticipate an adversary's actions. This perspective would guide their approach to future encounters with other civilizations, encouraging diplomacy, caution, and preparation as much as courage and resilience. Socially, the population emerged stronger. Communities that had been divided or indifferent to one another now recognized the importance of cohesion. Neighborhoods shared resources and coordinated reconstruction efforts, while leaders organized training programs to prepare citizens for potential future crises. Education became a priority, with children learning about science, strategy, and the importance of critical thinking. The shared experience of surviving a seemingly impossible threat created bonds that would last for generations, fostering a culture of mutual support, resilience, and preparedness. The civilization had not only survived physically but had grown socially and intellectually. As a result of the crisis, as the planet slowly stabilized, the aliens also began to consider the political and strategic lessons of the ordeal. They realized that isolation had left them vulnerable and that understanding the wider galaxy was essential for survival. Plans were made to expand their observational capabilities, develop communication networks with neighboring systems, and gather intelligence on potential threats. They recognized that knowledge, preparation, and foresight were as vital as courage in facing the unknown. The experience had taught them to anticipate danger, plan contingencies, and act decisively when circumstances demanded it. On a personal level, individuals reflected on their own actions during the crisis. Children who had hidden in shelters had witnessed the bravery of scientists and engineers. Adults who had helped maintain communication or manage resources felt pride in their contributions. The young scientists who had activated the artifact were celebrated as heroes, but they themselves acknowledged that their success had depended on the coordinated effort of the entire population. The event had fostered a sense of shared responsibility, emphasizing that survival was a collective endeavor, not the result of individual heroics alone. The alien civilization also considered the philosophical implications of their survival. They had sent a signal into the galaxy, seeking help, and had attracted a force far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Yet, through intelligence, strategy, and courage, they had turned potential destruction into survival. This experience reshaped their understanding of the universe. It was vast, unpredictable, and often dangerous. But it was also a place where knowledge, ingenuity, and collaboration could create opportunities and even victory. The civilization's worldview had expanded, and their approach to challenges became more sophisticated, strategic, and hopeful. Finally, as peace settled over the planet, the aliens began to rebuild their society with renewed vigor and purpose. Cities were reconstructed, infrastructure was repaired, and communities thrived with a new sense of confidence. The artifact remained a powerful symbol of their resilience, inspiring continued exploration, innovation, and preparation. The lessons learned from the crisis, the value of intelligence over brute force, the importance of unity, and the necessity of courage and creativity became embedded in the culture and passed down through generations. The aliens emerged from the ordeal not only alive but stronger, wiser, and more prepared to face the future, ready to navigate the complexities and dangers of a galaxy filled with both threats and possibilities. In essence, the aftermath of the encounter with the Deathworlder fleet was a period of reflection, growth, and transformation. The civilization had survived an event that could have annihilated them, and in doing so, they had discovered strengths they never knew they possessed. They had learned that survival required more than physical defenses. It demanded intelligence, strategy, creativity, courage, and collaboration. The experience reshaped their society, strengthened their bonds, and prepared them for the challenges of the wider galaxy. They had faced the most dangerous adversaries they could imagine and emerged victorious, not through violence, but through the power of knowledge and unity. The story of their survival became a foundational part of their identity. It was a narrative that reminded every citizen that even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope, ingenuity, and collaboration could prevail. The civilization understood that their place in the galaxy was not guaranteed, but they also realized that they had the tools, the knowledge, and the courage to defend it. The aftermath was not merely about reconstruction. It was about growth, reflection, and the development of a society capable of facing the universe with confidence, wisdom, and resilience.